Hello critters, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new here. Today I'm going to be going over my workflow for how I work in my webtoon, and give a few tips that I've learned on how to not spend a million years on it, even though it still takes like a million years, not like 2 million years though, you know? So, some of this can also apply to illustrations as well, it's just a few tricks I use to save time. So let's get into that. Quick disclaimer, I do use Clip Studio Paint for my things, so if you use a different program it might look a little different. So, with that out of the way. So first of all, I start out with thumbnails, which here's my thumbnail document. These are the smallest little drawings that I do while looking at my script, so that I'm not spending too much time while I'm sketching trying to figure out how I'm going to fit my text and panels and just get those ideas together. Of course, sometimes I'll change things in the sketch portion, but this part is just kind of making the pacing work and get the first ideas down. Just a little time saver. These don't have to be anything like fancy. They're kind of they're kind of jank. But anyways, okay. First tip. This is about how to like kind of quickly organize your panels, and something that I think saves time and headaches for me. I don't know. You can use Clip Studio's panels, but I usually just use the rectangle tool and go on a separate layer and draw all the panels, and then lock that layer so I don't accidentally draw on it, and that's done. Next, going through and doing the sketches to the line art is probably the part that takes the longest. This is sped up by like literally 40 times or something crazy. But having a routine of how many sketches you make before you line art, and kind of just going through and going panel by panel, sketching and then line arting, sometimes helps to make it feel a little less overwhelming. At least for me, I don't know. I usually do 2 clean sketches before I do the line art, and from the thumbnails, which I know I've been trying to reduce time by trying to make the first sketch a little cleaner so I could maybe just do line art on top of it, but I'm still like not there yet, but it's something that comes with practice, I think. Also, while this is going on, I'd like to talk quickly about how in comics it's okay if one panel doesn't look perfect if you're doing a ton of panels and are updating often, because chances are the person reading it is only going to be looking at it for a few seconds as they read it, so focus more on the feeling of the panel over making it impeccable at details, or you're just never going to finish it. And of course there's exceptions where if you want like a really impactful panel or view, and of course know your art style, just make sure you're not being too much of a perfectionist when you're having to draw upwards of 40 drawings for an update. And again, of course, if you like want it to be like really pretty, you can focus on that, but if you want to do something where you just want to get through some quick panels, then you don't have to make it look absolutely perfect, because you're gonna have a million drawings and there's gonna be scrolling through it. And yeah, just pushing through the line art can be kind of a tedious and annoying process, but once it's over, then it's over, and then you can get to flat coloring and kind of get through the rest of it. And again, like, line art just takes probably the longest part for me. I don't know why. It just trying to make it look nice, I guess. I try to do very solid lines so I can do flat coloring easier, but yeah. So, next trick. A way to quickly fill in flat colors, especially without having to do all of that going around the edges with a pen type of stuff. What you can do is take the magic wand tool and have it add to the selection in the settings and go around selecting everything but the characters. This part can be a little annoying if you have some smaller shapes or sharper edges that you sometimes have to go in and select, but it saves a crap ton of time, as once you've got all that selected, you're basically ready to go on flat colors. Once you have everything outside of your character selected, you can invert your selection by hitting this little button, so now you're filling in everything except what you just selected, and use a color to go and fill in the characters, and there you have it. New flat colors now, you can just go and start, and if you ever accidentally deselect, you can go towards this layer and create selection from layer to just select that base. Next little trick, I guess, is that when you're filling in sections, you can use a color to black out that section. Like here, I'm blacking out each character to fill in their skin tone. And once you black out colors, you can actually use a fill bucket of referring only to the editing layer and not applying to connected pixels, and fill in everything blacked out, as it'll fill the color of everything of the color that you just filled in, if that makes sense. So for flat colors in general, I do actually just use the fill bucket when I'm not able to just fill in large areas with the pen tool. And with this, if you have the area scaling turned up a little bit on your fill bucket, it won't leave any of the weird edges, but if you have softer lines, which is super nice, it saves a lot of time just using the fill bucket to kind of fill things in. I don't know, is that just me? A lot of people just use the pen tool, but that also applies for colors that are a little harder to see on flat colors. I'll use a solid block of color as well, so just for the white here, as I go through and fill in everything that color throughout the whole page. So here I'm just going through and doing my flat colors. It usually takes like a little bit of time, just based on how many different colors I have to fill in. As you can see, I'm just going panel by panel and just filling in everything that is the same color, I guess. And I do it all in different layers, kind of, even though I do end up doing all of my shading usually on one layer. But Yeah, as you can see, it's a little tedious, but it all depends also if your line art is clean or not, and some people have less clean line art, which is like totally fine. But that's why I do spend more time on line art, so it's easier to do the flat colors, but I don't know, that's just me. I just find it easier that way, but yeah. And there you have it. And next, quickly, here's the stylistic choice of mine is that I go in and I do the shading on the skin, which is like the little tumbler nose and the eye bags on a different layer, just above the skin layer, and I do that on a clipped multiply layer, as you can see, and that's basically the only like single layer shading I do apart from the overall shading, which I'll show y'all in a second. But this is just a little stylistic thing that I do to add some more like flush to the face. I don't know. I think it looks cute. I don't know. It's the tumbler nose as people remember, but yeah. So yeah, next trick, what I do is I put everything into a folder and I clip the multiply layer on top of that folder, so you're able to shade everything in that folder at once. And with this, it takes a lot less time than going in and shading every single different color. I know people do the strategy for illustrations as well. I tend to do each individual color when I'm doing illustrations, but when I'm saving time or if I want to have something look more cohesive, I do it this way, and I'll show y'all in a second how to make it kind of change color so it's not all the same red shading, because shading does depend on lighting and also like what it's on top of. But I usually go with like a nice red shading at first because I like warmer colors in the first place and I usually have warmer lighting, and then I'll go in a minute and kind of touch that up. Here I'm just kind of blending it out. I That's also a preference. I like to blend it out a little bit. I mostly use hard shading, but having some softer bits, I don't know. I just think it looks nice. I don't know. But yeah, doing that all at once too. Okay, so here is when you put the alpha lock on the multiply layer so that you're able to edit the colors of the shading without editing anything else. And this is where I go in and I usually take like a large soft brush, like an airbrush, and make it some kind of blue or a different color, usually a blue, so that I can go in and do the darker shading and shading in different parts that aren't as warm. And I just go around and I change the shading a little bit so it looks like a little more dynamic. I don't know. I just think that's an easy little trick to make it look a little more popping out, you know? I don't know. But yeah. So next I'm going to be doing a little overall color grading, I guess, by adding overall layers. And right now I was just doing a little bit of multiply going around the edges and adding an overlay layer on the top, adding just some extra shading in terms of the multiply layer, and then some more lighting in terms of the overlay layer, in order to make it, again, like pop a little more, make it look a little more rendered, quote unquote. You know, it's not actually like rendering, quote unquote, but it's, you know, close enough. It's what you can do quickly enough. Alright, so next part is doing the text, and a quick trick in order to kind of organize it. I usually put everything, like literally everything, into one folder before I start adding the text. And with the text, I'll draw all the bubbles on top of everything in one layer by itself. As you can see, and kind of just, I kind of just draw them with the pen tool, and it gets a little annoying sometimes, but you know how it is. And kind of going through making those shapes all on one layer is what I do, and kind of moving things around whenever I need to. And what I'll do then is I refer other layers with the fill bucket and the selected layer, and I go in like that, and I use the white and I fill in the speech bubbles on top of everything, as you can see. So it'll go on top of everything, because everything is in the folder below it. So that kind of saves time and headaches when it comes to making speech bubbles, I guess. And I put that all into a folder to organize it better then. So for the text, I usually just have my script open, and like writing your whole script beforehand is definitely a time saver instead of trying to go through and kind of make up the stuff on the spot, which of course I do kind of change things around when I'm typing it out to make it fit better, or if I just want to add like extra things. But having that script aside and writing that all beforehand, it can make it a lot easier and less time consuming when it comes to actually writing the stuff, you know? I don't know. Alright, so next it's time for backgrounds. What I do is I make a layer all the way at the bottom of like everything, basically the opposite, and then I select the layer with the panels on it, that locked layer from the beginning. And yeah, I just do the refer other layer, selected layer, fill bucket again with that layer selected. And they're messed up for a second. You gotta apply to connected pixels only, and then you're able to just go in and fill in those panels so that you have that base, and you're able to just fill in the backgrounds inside of the panels then. if that like helps at all. I think it helps, but yeah. Alright, and finally it's time for backgrounds then. And now I'm like literally no authority on backgrounds whatsoever because I kind of just do them in order to kind of give a sense of space. I don't really like, unless I have to set a scene, then I will draw a background, but for the most part, since my webtoon isn't my full-time job, I'm not able to drop hours on a background, which I know some people do and it's so awesome, but I just don't have the time or spoons to do that, so a lot of times I'll just kind of add blocks of color where I can, as well as kind of giving the impression of the background, kind of keeping in mind the space that they're in, so that they're not just kind of floating in a blank space. As you can see here, they're like in a hallway, and the other scene, they're in a classroom, which I kind of had the space set in the other pages, I guess. So yeah, it's going through finishing that up, and I'll show you also, to make it look a little more kind of cohesive, I added some overlay and some multiply, of course, to add some shadows, and also just some shadows to add some lighting, as you can see. Just a little touch to make it look a little more rendered, quote unquote, again, and kind of just add that mood lighting. And yeah, there you have it. Then I'll go in and I select the backgrounds and add just a little Gaussian blur to it, which is, if you go up on the filter, you can do that. And then finally adding a quick color balance layer to the top of everything, and it's done. For the most part. But yeah, that's about it for the video. If you have any questions, let me know. I know it was very quick and kind of scuffed. I just kind of wanted to show my workflow, because some people had asked before, especially when it comes to working on webtoons, which can take a million years if you don't have ways to kind of speed up the process, because it's difficult. It's difficult and time consuming. But yeah, let me know what you think below. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, all that stuff. If you have any video suggestions, let me know, because I never know what the heck to talk about. But until next time, critters, bye.